Hello, welcome to another one of our live chats on Saturday. Here, this is Glaucio Pessoa. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're all welcome. Today, we're going to have a very interesting talk with David Cohen. He is going to tell us about learning to apply the golden rule. David, he is the co-director of the Spiritist Group of Montana. David and his wife enjoy traveling and connecting with other groups to share knowledge and experience as they continue to learn, study, and practice. Hello, David. Thank you
Good
so
morning.
very much. Thank you for being here. And this is a very important topic. Uh, so I appreciate you telling us a little, not a little bit, but explaining, how to learn to apply the golden rule. Um, Before we start, I would like to say the initial prayer, but just as a reminder, please feel free to use the whatever medium you're using, social media you're using to connect with us, either YouTube or Facebook, to send us your comments or questions. And David here, he's very knowledgeable. He'll be more than glad to provide clarification. So to kick things off, let's say our initial prayer. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity for us to be here, even though distanced by physical means, however, connected through technology. Open our minds, our hearts for the golden rule, which is so important to us. Help us love God above all, everything, and also love others as we love ourselves. Help us in our struggles. Help us use all the enlightenment that the Spiritist doctrine offers us to become better spirits, to live better, and to become more positive contributors to the progress of Earth. May your peace be with us during our lecture. So be it.
So be it.
David, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Glaucia. And thank you, everyone, all my brothers and sisters here with me as we study together, as we teach and learn together, as we experience one of the truly great luminous blessings of Spiritism, in that it gives us this pathway that enables us to collaborate, to cooperate, to learn the golden rule, essentially. And I'll share with you that it was humbling to be invited to give a talk like this, and it was given to me to choose the task. I meditated on this for some time. I thought about what could I really offer in this field of study? What could I really offer from my experience? What do I know about? And I'm not coming to you as a doctor of the law or a scholar. I'm coming to you as a fellow student of Spiritism and one who has way more to learn than I have to teach. But still, I found a place in me where I can relate some material that's very close to my heart, and that's really helped me so much in finding my way in this pathway and in this world, and especially at this time we live in. So the golden rule came up as a topic that I thought I could somewhat easily expound upon my relationship to it and the relationship of my group studies with it for 40 to 60 minutes. And the more I studied and the more I prepared, it changed and it changed. And I became, I'm not sure what the right word is, but almost overcome by the depth of teachings that exist around this rule, around this concept. And as it changed, my thought changed to how could I possibly fit all this within 40 to 60 minutes? But I know that I will do my best, and my hope is that I will at least provide something useful for each person in attendance and for all those in attendance with us that we cannot quite see at the time, although, of course, some of us can. Without further ado, what is the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. It's said in different ways in different times. Treat other people the way you want other people to treat you. Sometimes it's put in with a negation. Don't do to others what you would not want them to do to you. But it's all the same. It's all the same function of reciprocity. What goes out from us comes back to us. This is cause and effect. This is physics. This is clear in so many explanations in the Spirit's book. We can study this with the universal fluid, with the intelligent principle, with our relationship literally with all things. And so, with just a cursory study of this rule with this concept, one of the most interesting things that I found is where is the golden rule? I think it's easier to find a place. It's harder to find a place where there's not the golden rule explained or presented to us in some way. All the major religions on earth feature, discuss, give us the golden rule. All the philosophies that deal with human behavior, with human conduct, with human morality, discuss and feature the golden rule. Ecology. You can study the golden rule in ecology and nature. You can study ecosystems where creatures learn to treat each other better, where aside from the distortions and the interferences of man who is not yet understanding his role as a cooperative and collaborative creature, we can see whole systems get restored to harmony, to abundance. This is the nature of our reality here. And just for some time, we've interfered in it to where we can't quite see things as they are. A place that I found it beautiful to observe the golden rule being learned, being practiced, being studied is on the playground. We can watch children. I don't have children of my own biological descent, but that doesn't matter. If we have the opportunity to observe them, in fact, where I'm sitting right now, I can see a playground, which is very interesting to me. I hadn't planned it that way. But kids on the playground learn harmonious relationship with each other through experience and through experiencing what they do and they don't want to feel. Without all the distortions that come in later through society, through programming, through fear, children can really show us how the golden rule applies to our hearts, because they take it at its most simplest form. To hear them talk about perhaps bullies or adults that they find, I'll use the word disharmonious again, is peaceful. They're not looking to go and mete out justice. They avoid what doesn't work for them. They learn to cleave with the groups that they vibrate with. They embody, in many ways, the golden rule. And they're so forgiving. They're so much more apt to take a behavior and say, well, they didn't feel good that day, or something happened, but they're okay. They've taught me so much about forgiveness. I owe so much to them. So we're going to take a quick look at some very impactful historical places where I came across the golden rule. And perhaps if I can weave this all together like Paul would, this will come out as a beautiful tapestry showing us this continuous thread of teaching, of love that's been given to us since the earliest times. So this teaching, this example of the golden rule is from the Jewish history, which I'll just offer a little personal note. This is the tradition, the lineage that I come from. And I struggled for quite some time in making peace with this simple fact, and was deeply aware that I had some, I use that word lightly, forgiveness to do with myself, with my lineage, with my ancestry, and I'm just now being able to embrace that which I vibrate with, rather than throw the whole thing out and say this is all distortion. That's not true. How could it be so black and white? This incredible tradition, spanning longer than I could even understand right now, studied God, studied morality in many ways. But of course, there are many individuals who didn't quite know how to apply the golden rule, but they knew how to study, they knew how to pray, they knew in some ways how to worship, how to cultivate higher vibration. And so I'm saying that just in the spirit that Spiritism has provided me with of understanding, that there's validity, there's holiness, there's divinity in all the religions, which to me, and I'm sure for many of you listening, was one of the aspects of Spiritism that spoke to your heart, that lets you know that this was not a bully on the playground trying to seek dominance, but rather the least of all, rather a system that could incorporate all other systems, that could accept and forgive anything that does not come from God, and let us use it as a tool to teach us, to help us study ourselves, our conduct, our behavior, and lead us back to the pathway that we're on. So, from deep in the Jewish tradition, there's a story of Rabbi Hillel, who's also discussed briefly in the introduction to the Gospel according to Spiritism. And in this instance, Rabbi Hillel was approached. This was part of a slightly more involved instance, but there was a Gentile who was a person who was not of the Jewish faith. And the Gentile approached the rabbi and another person and said to them, "You will win me as a convert to your religion if you can recite the Torah while dancing up and down on one leg, jumping up and down." And the first person, whose name was Shammai, pushed this person aside with a stick that he was using for some important task. The person, I believe, turned and looked to Hillel like, "What do you say about this? Is that how you're going to treat me too?" But Rabbi Hillel did this. I want to back up one sentence. This was not like a friendly so-called encounter. This Gentile wasn't coming with a deep respect and reverence for these men. This was a mocking type question. And I say that because this is going to come up again later. That with this attitude of, "Hey, you holy people, you're so great, I'll convert to your religion if you can perform this feat for me, if you can impress me and entertain me," is what I got from this interpretation. And so Hillel said this: "Don't do to another what you find despicable if it were to be done to you. All the rest of the Torah is commentary." In another translation of that story, I read the word distraction used instead of commentary. I found this very powerful, and I want to put it a little more in historical context. This is also explained in the Gospel according to Spiritism, amongst other places, that in the days of antiquity, the Jewish people, they placed this incredible reverence on the scripture, on the written word. This is all the Torah, Talmud. And it was the doctors of the law, the scribes, that would basically convey this to the people. My point is, they placed an incredible amount of importance, higher than I can put my arm here, on this written word to connect them to divinity. In their understanding, this was their only pathway. They couldn't go meditate on a mountain and get close to the Messiah, to the prophets. And that doesn't exist as a possibility. They needed others. They needed those who had connection to the written work. So this rabbi saying that is huge. He was saying, essentially, love one another. That's this book. That's this whole teaching. And he won a convert that day to the faith. That's how that story goes. So we're going to fast forward to another part of connected Jewish history from another person that came through the Jewish faith. I'm speaking of Jesus. And the time when he was asked by Pharisees, what was the greatest commandment? So we're going to use what I just discussed to build on this point. He was not asked this by fellow seekers, although deep down we all know that we are all fellow seekers. These Pharisees Their spirits approached Jesus. They didn't ignore him or avoid the situation. Albeit with a mocking tone, they went and asked the master this question: what is the greatest commandment? This was a trap. In thinking and preparing about this, what occurred to me could be sort of a parallel in today's understanding, is asking an extremely wise judge or lawyer, what is the most important law? What is it? Is it not to kill? Well, there's certain people who understand not to kill. There's other things that they don't quite understand. So can we value one above another? Like, that's, in my understanding, putting it down to a very black and white way of thinking. And Jesus didn't do that. He brought it back to the divinity again. From this Jewish tradition, these people understood, they worshiped one God in the way that they knew how. And in my studies and what I've come across, it's the other part of the greatest commandment. Let me refer to the greatest commandment. Love God with all your heart and your neighbor as you would yourself. And then it was said, all the law and the prophets are contained within this teaching. So we meditated, we meaning my group and many of us that studied together, quite a bit on this passage from the Gospel according to the Spiritism that puts this in the context where we can a little more easily understand. And the distillation I've come up with is this: Jesus, always knowing who he's talking to and the condition of their hearts and minds, referred to this most important concept of their path, God. God's up here. But then he also said, I left one part out, love God with all your heart and your neighbor as you would yourself, which is similar to it. He's linking these together. In my observations, in my life journey, in my involvement with different circles of Judaism, I have seen a lot of mention of God. I've seen a lot of prayer. I've seen a lot of worship. And frankly, I've seen a lot of disharmonious relationships with neighbors, especially neighbors of other faiths, but not necessarily. Even within the Jewish faith, I've personally experienced an incredible amount of quarreling. And so it's with that background that I believe he gave this teaching. Love your neighbor, not just God. There's someone right in front of you. And it's Spiritism. It's my real intention to weave this all together to where Spiritism is what brings that all together for us. Worshiping God in the way that we treat our neighbor. We're going to get back there, if this all goes according to the plan, as I speak more about how Spiritism can lead us into a deeper understanding of the Golden Rule. We're going to turn to the Spirits book. I'm going to read to you very briefly. Spirits book question number 632 asks this: as man is subject to error, may he not be mistaken in his appreciation of good and evil, and believe himself to be doing right when in reality he is doing wrong? The answer: Jesus has said, whatsoever ye would that men should do unto you, do ye even so to them. The whole moral law is contained in that injunction. Make it your golden rule, and you will never go wrong. Does that sound familiar? So, I am fairly certain that all those in attendance here, watching this, listening, know how much moral teachings are contained in the Spirits book, in all the Spiritist writings. If any of you perhaps are new to these materials, they're full of moral information. They're full of teachings. They're full of things to guide us, to lead us to better moral behavior, moral understanding. So this is a very impactful question and answer. This is saying the same thing that Rabbi Hillel said, and this is referring to Jesus' teachings as recorded in the New Testament in Matthew. This is pulling all this together and saying the same thing. All the moral teachings you need to know are right here. There's something else from the Gospel according to Spiritism, from the introduction that my group was just studying that really jumped out for me. It speaks of the concordance, of the fact that the information received virtually at the same time in almost 1,000 groups was of the same type of teaching. It was the same information. And the fact that this teaching exists in some form in all these religions, all of them, all these philosophies, again, it's a concordance. Now, we're not going to go deep into the rabbit hole of where did all the religions come from. This is a much different conversation. But just the simple observation that here's this concept, love each other, treat each other the way you'd want to be treated, appears over and over and over and over, all around us. Again, just encouraging us. And I want to bring it a little deeper here, because it's not just a rule. The golden rule is not advice. The golden rule is not something just to remember or to write down or to put on a poster and hang it somewhere that you want to edify. The golden rule is who we are. It's a description. We do unto others as we want them to do to us. And I can already hear the echoes of confusion in myself and perhaps in some listening. Because you might ask this. Sometimes I find I don't cultivate a good energy with myself. Sometimes I find that there's times when I even accept what I would call poor treatment from others. Does this mean the rule is flawed? Is this a loophole? If we've come to the place in our life where we seek pain, where we're aware that we're in a pattern of suffering and seek more of it, does this nullify the rule? If we would have others treat us poorly based on that condition in our heart and ourself. And so now I'm going to share something kind of personal, which was such a blessing for me. And the thing is this. I believe all listening again have some relationship with receiving mediumistic information. If not firsthand, read any of the Spirit's book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, any of these books in the Andre Luis series. These all feature over and over information received through mediumship, through higher order beings. This is part of our lineage, part of our inheritance. It's the ability to do this. And so during our group's work, I was blessed enough to have a dialogue with mentor beings here with us to guide us. And they gave a teaching on the golden rule that didn't contain anything different than what we've already discussed today. Just this principle of reciprocity, to do to others as you want them to do to you, as a simple principle. And it stuck out in me as a question. This was, I think, about 4 to 5 years ago. And at the time, I was really still experiencing a lot of what I'll call distortion. I hadn't fully made up my mind to accept the love in myself and that I've been. And I was already actively, of course, engaged in the Spiritist studies. And so during this dialogue, we discussed the golden rule. And then I asked this question, as I've been describing. I said, what about if we're aware that we're seeking more difficulty, more pain? What if we become aware that we have a tendency to bring that into our life, sometimes in other relationships? Does this mean that if we would have ourselves be treated roughly, then it's okay for us to treat others roughly, because that's who we are? And my friends, I'm speaking to all of you now. This was the response I got was breathtaking in a way. These mentor beings could barely understand what I was saying. They could barely understand. Why would you do that? Why would you seek more? Haven't you realized you've been freed? Haven't you realized your pathway to harmony and love is right in front of you? If you choose it, if you choose love and harmony. Why would you possibly seek more of what you've experienced for so long now that you've been freed? And I think I stammered and yammered a little bit. But then they were able to give me this, which really helped unlock this key in myself. They described the situation to me that I'll refer to in the Spirits book as well. They described two states, that of being in a thwarted, thwart meaning stop, halt, our thwarted state, or our healed state. They said in your thwarted state, you'll do anything to maintain that. You'll do anything to stay in control. Even if it's staying in pain, even if it's hurting each other, because you've chosen that state. You've chosen to delay progress. Or the healed state, what we're all being prepared for, and many of us have accepted already, the healed state. When we accept gently, with resignation, with patience, who we are, the choices we've made, when we accept it, when we're willing to be humbled by all the choices, thoughts we've experienced, by all the actions that we've committed, then our pathway changes direction. Then the golden rule takes on a whole different meaning. I'm going to refer back to the Spirits book. The law of progress teaches us thoroughly and in depth this concept that we are all souls moving towards God, moving towards unity, moving towards this togetherness at some point. It makes the clear statement that we do not regress. We do not go backwards. However, we can delay our progress. When I connected this teaching with that of our benefactors, it's all the same. Delay progress towards God, or an amount that we can't even understand, that it defies our imagination. But we're always gaining impressions. We're always seeing either what does work or what doesn't work. And so, to think we can apply this golden rule as an excuse to treat others badly shows us our relationship to it. Because being a description of who we are, we can see that any choice in that realm of where is it okay to experience more pain and distortion comes from that wish only to stay in pain and distortion. It's a proof of our free will and our ability to choose as given to us by God and described over and over and over through the Spiritist teachings. I want to refer again to the Spiritist teachings as one of the more powerful ways we can actually get closer to the golden rule, which has helped me so much. The Spiritist writings I'm talking about are definitely the codification, the Spirits book, the Mediums book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, but all the works that are, and there's 2 more books in the codification, don't think you're getting away with just 3. There's all these other works that contain more narratives. And early on in my studies, the first book myself and my wife read, which led us directly into Spiritism, was No Solar. And No Solar and all the subsequent books that came after, and all, there's more than I'm not going to list them. You all know what I'm referring to. If you don't, you need to learn this. The books written by Givaldo, the books with Emmanuel as the author, there's so much narrative here. These are not stories just written, they're not written to entertain us. They're not written to distract us. They're written to us to bring us closer to who we are. These all have real life examples of people working with their morality, of people either following the golden rule and really living it out or falling on their face as they learn about it, as they learn to apply it. We make so many mistakes. And all these books contain vital living examples that when we study, when we see how others did it before us, perhaps they did it so much better that we look up to them. We look up to their example, not as someone removed or greater than us, but as a brother or sister who has done the work we're here to do. That happens sometimes. Other times we see clearly where they fell on their face hard. And Perhaps we know we're past doing that in certain instances, but not so far past that it's outside of the realm of possibility for us to, as I said, fall on our face, because that's part of our human condition. We're here to make mistakes, learn from them, and assist each other up, out of the dirt and into the field. So the Spiritist studies have been brought to me over and over as a means. They're one of the sacred gifts given to us to improve ourselves. This is not just for our intellectuality. And I wish to talk about another gift that Spiritism has given to me and to all of us, and that as we study together, as we really work on these materials, again, designed for our moral improvement together, it's even more powerful. And not because we always agree, because we frequently disagree. If not through our lips, energetically many times, we experience frictions and difficulties with each other. I'm going to refer to that again here. But it's in the study together. What is our intention? Again, our intention is to come together, look at this incredible body of written materials given to us to uplift us, apply ourselves to learn it with each other, ask questions of each other, comment on our experience, take risks. Say, this one really confused me. I really didn't get this at all. Or this one really convicted me. I feel like I'm doing a terrible job. And perhaps if there's someone more experienced, they would tell us, you're not doing a terrible job. You're learning to apply the golden rule. We're all learning together. And sometimes it doesn't look pretty. Frequently, it doesn't look pretty for some of us. I remember week after week, I was falling in my face on some way. And I'm so grateful I had the courage to keep going. Because sometimes it can be really hard, seeing where we don't apply this rule, seeing where we clearly treat others in a way that we would not want to be treated. And that's what it's for. That's what this study is for. That's what our brothers and sisters are for, who have the patience to stay with us and to say, we love you despite all your errors and despite your shortcomings. We know, we still love you. We were there too. Perhaps much more recently than we care to admit, many of us. So this is one brilliant aspect that Spiritism gives to us to lead us, to guide us, to direct us closer to moral understanding. So I'd like to weave in this other concept of group work and also just we find around us in any given day. And I wish to weave in a teaching given to us. And when I say us, I do mean all of us. I can't find in my initial studies a place where this is clearly put and concisely written where I can quote it to you. But I can do something perhaps a little better than that and offer all of your own experiences and perhaps a test, a litmus test, where you yourself can determine whether or not something fits the golden rule in the way that you vibrate with it. And this concept is that of being a mirror for each other. This concept goes back to when I was speaking of loving God with all your heart and your neighbor as you would yourself, being so similar, because as we've been taught and led, that is how we love God. Reading about Jesus, reading about how he would go away and connect with, be in nature and solitude and connect back with the Father. I don't really know of other examples where it's so clearly written or described to us that humans do that, go and connect directly with Source. I've heard of different examples here and there, but speaking of my circles, of the people I know, there's times when we go connect with some higher energy, if we're meditating and praying, we feel some different things. But these are the few, in my experience. There perhaps are some listening that all they do is connect with God. We love you, bless you, and thank you for being here with us. Seriously. But for the rest of us, we see a whole lot more of each other than God. And that's where we see God. More accurately, for many of us, for myself, that's where we see who we are being. Are the people around me that come into my field of experience all harmonious? Are they patient? Are they loving and kind with me? Do they really want to listen to what I have to say? Or are there other energies? Are there people that come into my sphere of influence that I find caustic, that I find ignorant, that I find anything that I don't appreciate having it around me, all of those are aspects we have in ourself. We've been taught this multiple times in multiple ways. And truth be told, I did not really fully believe this when I was first told about this years ago. Years ago, I was taught anything that you see in someone else exists in you. Anything and everything. And especially those that you find challenging, those are directly for you, David, to find in yourself, heal it, find the behavior, find the attitude. I'm going to offer a funny aside because it feels very appropriate right now. Early on, almost 10 years ago, in my Spiritist investigation, exploration, I read the Gospel according to Spiritism. And over, it mentions pride. It even mentions it as one of the main things Jesus worked to help us heal, to help us see. You guys think you're up here, man. You're not. You're not way up here. We're all on some kind of level together. There's none of you that are higher. The ones who are willing to actually be the least. Now I'm weaving in another teaching again. Apologies. Back to pride. I was kind of amazed reading how many examples of it were in this teaching, because I was like, I don't have that. I feel for all these people that really struggle with the pride. My friends, brothers and sisters, it took me years to be willing. At first, there was one attitude of something that I was prideful about. And then as the months went on into years, I was able to identify some big concepts about life and spirituality that I had a lot of pride and arrogance about. I was pretty sure I knew better. Pretty certain. How did I learn that, you might ask? Well, I was around what I would call some prideful individuals. And as I was willing to take the advice of the spirituality and bring into my own responsibility that which was in my experience, oh boy, was that a voyage of discovery. It continues to this day. These things that I'm surprised by. And this is kind of to conclude this humorous journey back through the gospel and what we don't think applies to us. Anything and everything that I've read in all these teachings, now I'm much more careful. When I read something and say, nah, that's not for me, there's another part that says, do you want to bet? Do you want to tack that on the wall somewhere and see how long that one comes to come home to roost? Any and all of it is in us. And here's this kind of litmus test I was referring to. If you don't believe me, study it. Verify it. Find the next thing that irritates you from someone and give yourself a bit of a timeout. Because if we're in reaction to each other, it's been my experience that there's too much other energies going on. And there's a lot more possibility for more harm to go on. We need to get to a therapeutic environment. We need to get to a safe place. Sometimes that's just me, myself, and I, right? We need to sit down with it and ask ourselves, what is it I'm really after here? I've noticed this behavior. I don't think this is connected to me. But to do a real study with it, use prayer. Use any tool you have to determine whether or not this is true. And again, I'm telling you from my own experience. This was not something taught to me, you must believe this, whatever's irritating in you and someone is in you. I studied it. I have not found an example where it didn't fully apply. Where it didn't apply so deeply, the more I see it, the more it helped me. Now on to that note of being humbled and practicing Spiritism and learning to apply the Golden Rule. And I'll share another example of a very powerful interaction that I experienced in a mediumistic opportunity. And it really helps me form a different direction with this work. This also happened years ago. It taught me a lot about the Golden Rule. My group, early on, we received regular communications from mentors, assisting us to keep going, cleaning up perhaps some sloppiness that had been coming in around the edges. And then we started working with a close family member who clearly had very deep mediumistic tendencies and connections, but did not have a lot of experience with the study. And so we still proceeded, and we learned an awful lot from this. And early on, we were faced with what we might call a disobsession opportunity. For those not familiar, this involved beings, spirits who were opposed to the work that we were doing, and particularly the spouse of the individual that had just joined us. And they were dedicated to pulling down this work, specifically with this person. They actually were somewhat neutral in terms of our group, provided that we stop being involved in this person's life. And so the real heart of this matter comes during my dialogues with the chief obsessor, who was so intelligent and so well worded that it was very rich for me to speak with him. And at one very significant meeting, boy, I told him what to do. I told him, without forgiveness, without opening his heart to reality and to the healing available to him, he was going to continue to suffer for an indeterminate amount of time. And immediately, there was no pause. He kind of scoffed at me and he said, "You see, but your words have no value because you yourself have not fully forgiven." He said this, and this is a huge take home for everyone. He said, "We listen to your bigger mouth, David. Your behavior. We know you are not a fully forgiving person. At times, you're not very forgiving at all." And that shut me up because he was 100% correct. 100. And beyond that, how did I violate the golden rule right there? I was lying to him. I was preaching to this man. I was telling him to do what I had not done. And this is an insult to our lineage. This is an insult to this work of representing the truth, the way, and the life in our own hearts, in our own work. What would have been more honest? Telling him that I have not yet forgiven. Telling him anything that fully aligned with my experience. Telling him that if I found myself in his position, maybe I wish this, that, or the other thing. But none of those things are what happened. The most important part here is that, in a way, I bore false witness. In a way, I violated another commandment and attempted to do my job a different way and failed. It was one of the best failures I've ever experienced because it fully illustrated to me that these teachings aren't to be taught. They're not to be preached. Paul taught us, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. And so when I use words that aren't attached to what I've actually experienced, I'm losing a crowd. I'm losing one crowd and gaining another. Because as we're taught, we are never alone. We're never alone. We're never alone. And we're always in this rule. We're always in some relationship to it. See, it's my deeper understanding that it's not just doing to others that we see, doing to others that we know. We are always, as humans, transmitting, giving out the vibration that we've cultivated in us. And we're always, as humans, receiving the vibrations that we're attuned to. How does this relate to the golden rule? We're always doing unto others. Always. It doesn't matter if they're with us or not. How do we spend our time when no one's there? How do we spend our time when no one's looking? Perhaps if any of you are listening, I'm doing those little air quotes because it's never true that we're alone, and it's never true that no one's looking. We're always with others, always. We've been taught recently about vast communities of microorganisms in every part of our body. On every hair follicle, there's communities. Is our pride so great that we think just because we're somewhere between, well, there's children among us too, a few feet and, 6 feet and change, that's the range of possibility of beings who need to be treated well by us? No! There's beings that barely even have matter. There's beings that I don't think have matter at all. We're treating them too. We're doing unto them. And so this is how We cultivate the energy within us by constantly running this through. It's not something to be memorized, this golden rule. It's something that we're in all the time. So really, what we're called to is awareness, is being willing to ask ourselves, what am I choosing right now? What energy am I tuned into? Am I interested in prayer right now? Am I interested in seeking something higher? Do I need one of my devices? Do I need a distraction? Do I need beverages? I'm not saying either of these things are bad or good. I'm saying, what are we doing? Because in all of it, we are the golden rule. We do to others what we would have them do unto you. And something perhaps I might begin to conclude on, considering those around us. If we've ever met someone who keeps coming to mind for me is Givaldo Franco. I don't know if I've ever really met anyone like that in this incarnation. You can feel him. You can feel him. He's cultivated to such a high degree within himself. There's a vibration around this man. And we've all experienced this, where there's a room that we're in, there's some place where we are, and someone comes in, and they don't necessarily utter a word through their lips. Perhaps they make some noises or whatever, just body motions. But we know how they feel. If they're of a low vibration, if they're having a really hard time, we're feeling that. That's that golden rule in process. Perhaps someone comes into the room, like I described before, of a high vibration. We feel that too. And so here's the thing. We've all been both of those people. We've been the one coming into the room fully thinking, considering, cultivating the energy of all of our problems, all of what's not going well, all of what's low. We're attracting more of it. We're sending out a wave of influence in front of us as we enter. And we've also been the other person. We've also been that person who brings love into the room, who is doing to the others as we really want them to do to us. We're giving the love that we want to receive back. And each and every day, each and every hour, each and every moment, we're one of those people. And so it's been perhaps the aspect of studying and practicing spiritism I'm most grateful for is it's helped me to be more aware of which one I'm being. It's helped me perhaps the most when I've been humiliated and I needed to look that word up because it didn't mean anything bad. It means I was made humble. It means I didn't have the awareness of the pride that I was occupying up here. And I needed the experience of practice with my brothers and sisters to be brought down to a humble place, to a place where now I can now reconnect with a reality, with the vibrations that we're here to cultivate. I really appreciate everyone being here and learning and teaching along with me as I learn and teach along with all of you. And I feel complete in this portion of the talk, and let's move into questions and answers.
Awesome, David. I loved it. There were two things that I really, and that I thought was very clever in your talk. First of all, the whole concept of others being the mirror of ourselves, right? If we see something, a shortcoming in somebody else, that's because most likely it's a reflection of something that we have. And another point that you made that I thought was very thoughtful was the fact that, yeah, we are, at some point, we're always, at least in this stage, we're always going to be, at some point, either one of those two people, right? Somebody who walks into the room and brings all that positivity, all that positive energy, all that optimism, or we can walk into a room and be the downer. Right? Be the one who brings all the negative energy, negative. It's part of what we are. So I thought that those two concepts were very well explained. Thank you. So what about some questions now? Okay,
Yeah.
let's check this out. First of all, the first question here. How can we, oh, that's an interesting one. How can we apply the golden rule when someone clearly wants to do us harm? What do you think about this?
That's a really good one. And my mind immediately goes to our teacher Jesus about turning the other cheek, that there's going to be times when this happens in our life. And I'm also remembering a very strong teaching that we're not given more than we can handle. We're not given that. We're given things that we can handle and we can represent and do a good job. And so if we're approached in any given situation where someone wants to do us harm and we don't see a way to truthfully avoid the situation, perhaps it's a child throwing a fit, needing to slap us and act out. By doing that, applying the golden rule, we've applied it. Let's not make the situation any worse. Again, using the example of a child, because I believe when we're adults, we act like this way many times. We throw fits. We act in ways doing each other harm, not with deep knowledge of what we're doing. We're acting out. We're acting in a way that we will regret later. And so sometimes it'll come to us to absorb some of that. And it's my belief that, again, that won't, I'm not talking about loss of life or, a serious attack. There's the law of preservation outlined in the Spirit's book. But that we have an example to bear witness and to offer the attacker a way for them to heal as well.
That is very, very interesting. Very well put in. When we think of others actually having a fit, I mean, we got to be, at least try to be the adult in the situation, not make the situation worse. Here's a question from Yasko. In some instances, when fall in mental emotional imbalance and it is difficult to apply the golden rule, is silence or temporary retrieval to our inner being a platinum or silver rule? How to practice it? So when we
Yeah,
fall, when we have this emotional imbalance, so how can we practice? Should we make the platinum rule or the silver rule? Which way is it?
I love this question. And in my studies, I came across writings about the platinum and silver rule. And to combine with something that when we fall into those states, like that I'll refer to as the thwarted state, we're not in our healed state. Another way to look at that, we're not in our right mind. When we're not in our right mind, discernment becomes so much more difficult. For me, I'm not able to discern if I'm in a panicked state or if there's all this energy moving around. I find I'm closer to animal instinct than to conditioned response, than to intelligent response. So the most important thing is to get balanced. The most important thing sometimes is not to go back into the fray and deal with our brothers and sisters, but retreat in a sense until you can find that balance. I'm not talking about ascetism. I'm not talking about pulling back from a group or from anywhere, but there's times where, just like Jesus went to the wilderness to reconnect, we need to do that to get balanced. And we could talk easily another 40 minutes how to do that. But that would be my concise response. The most important thing is to achieve balance, so then we can go on with the golden rule. I think the other rules come in as kind of attempts for the mind to control the situation. That's been my experience, that we can always bring it back to this level of conduct. Treat others as how I want to be treated. If I'm in such a way where I'm going to consider poor treatment, I'm not balanced, I'm not healthy, I'm not able to practice, I need healing.
That is interesting. I mean, it also applies, right, to the golden rule. I have to, the same way that I would hope or expect others to be balanced as they treat me, why not balance myself and find my balance, my inner balance, before I can um, associate with others or communicate with others? Very well explained. We have more questions. Considering the concordance method utilized by Kardec in Spiritism and relate that to all religions, could we say that the concordance that comes from God is the golden rule?
That's exactly what I'm saying as the result of this research, that it's really the one thing given to all of us. You can find in common everywhere. And even observing philosophies that don't speak about God. And I remember Jesus telling us there's others from other flocks. There's flocks that don't acknowledge God. If they're able to love their neighbor, we're there. We're living it.
Very interesting. So pretty much we see this concordance. It's important for us to see that this message from Jesus coming from different ways, right? Not
Yes.
just from our Christian Judeo tradition, but from other lines as well. Because Jesus being the governor of earth, he sends messengers from different from different angles to us.
Yes. And there's disciples of Jesus that don't know the name, that have never heard
Yeah,
of Jesus, but that cultivate the same exact energy. And we're all together with them as well.
that's true. Awesome. So a question from Kirsten. Hi, Kirsten. Living the golden rule is the ideal, but how can we stay authentic and true to ourselves? That means living the golden rule when it's so easy to fall back into old patterns. That's a very important question.
Yes. I'm really grateful for this question too, because this was a whole other portion of this talk that I worked a lot on and actually didn't speak much about at all, is that how do we relate with ourselves to the golden rule? And there's this whole portion where we have to learn to apply it to ourselves first. And I'm going to make this a little personal because there was a part of my journey that really showed me my relationship with it. And then there was a turning point that I won't go too deep here, but just to outline how to answer this question. There was a time when I asked the mentors about what happens if we're in distress or pulling other energies in, and they described the thwarted or the healed state. And so I had an opportunity later where I was involved in a powerful group work exercise, and I had this notion of who I was and what I brought to the group. I had this strong thought, like this strong concept of who I am and what it is that I offer. And the experience was extremely humbling because it showed that no, this person that I thought I was not quite there. There's aspects of me that were there, but there were other aspects that were not healed. There were aspects in me that were from that thwarted state where I still believed in all kinds of distress and distortion in myself. This was hidden from myself by myself. And it took years and a lot of work with others and a lot of assistance to get it up to the surface to where I could see, oh, I have these old prideful attitudes and a low self-worth around it. I was able to identify where I didn't see myself as worthy of doing this work, worthy of receiving God's love and forgiveness, and worthy of giving it to myself. And so the action point there that I located was the willingness to work on my own forgiveness, to say, okay, all my best efforts have got me here where I am now. And I'm still finding these energies that, as authentic as I can be, I don't want in me. I don't feel good about being this person. And so I set on what I'm going to call a course of forgiveness. I researched it, I studied it, I prayed for it a lot, over and over and over. And I had another experience in my group where something happened. I'll tell you, to my wife, something very difficult. We went through an experience together. And this was a couple of years after I had this fall on my face experience. And I was so grateful because it was this difficult experience, and it showed me that I was willing to be loving even through all this. And it showed both of us this, to where I'm not telling you I've arrived. I'm not some, loving all the time worker. That's not true. But it showed me that my self-worth had gotten above the rank of I don't think I'm okay, to where like that's here. And then I was here, like I think I'm okay and I'm going to love my wife if she's going through a terrible time. That was a pivotal moment in my journey. And I believe for many of us, we have to come to that point where we've forgiven ourselves for all the mistakes we've made in this life and all the other lives, for all of them, to the degree that which we can go forward into the healed state. Because if we're still wallowing in that vibrational low self-worth of not willing to forgive ourselves, we're not applying the golden rule to ourselves. We're not there yet. We have to cultivate this tenderness towards ourselves, the way that Jesus would love us. Like it's the same energy. Because if we're not willing to receive it from ourselves, we can't receive it from someone else. I hope that makes sense.
It made a lot of sense. I think you actually explained it quite well. The golden rule starts with us, right? And when you say love yourself, meaning truly love yourself, not try to impose to others, not try to be someone else, but understand our shortcomings and see, and see how much we have to grow. Very, very well explained. Thank you. Thanks, David. In our opinion, do you think the golden rule is a value or belief? That's a very interesting one.
I think it's closer to value because I really think it's on a vibrational level. I think that it's our relationship with the fluid. It's like our intelligent principle, how we've developed it, the choices we've made, life after life, and how we relate to the world around us. And so I think it's way beyond the level of belief. I think it's reality.
That's very true. I mean, a value is something that's embedded in us, right? And something
Yes.
that we put to action. Yeah, very true. We have more questions. Can you expand on what thoughts came to you when reading Non Solar for the first time? I like this one.
I really like that one. The concept of eternal responsibility. and and it was kind of shocking at times coming across this. No Solar introduced to me the concept of spiritual suicide. That even if we don't take our life all at once, that, oh, this is a perfect application of the golden rule. That living in a way where we're not willing to love ourselves day after day, where we're not forgiving ourselves. Like Andre Luis in the book, he had turned to alcohol in his incarnation, which, as I know, is a way to numb and to push my life away from me. I don't want to feel as much. And so that book really started those movements inside myself of, wait, like even if I'm willing to be a spirit doctor worker on the other side, I'm still responsible for all my choices, everything I've cultivated in myself. And so I would say the biggest thing is that notion of responsibility, that it stays with us in the afterlife and even gets more intensified, that all the lessons we haven't learned, that we haven't been willing to embody when we are embodied, await for us with even more urgency on the other side.
Excellent. I mean, actually, that would have been a lecture by itself or even a workshop.
Easily.
So we are done with our questions. I'd like to open up for any final comments and for the final prayer. However, if you allow me, David, I'd like to make two announcements. So first of all, our lectures, the schedule of lectures continue next week. At the same time, next week we're going to have Edward Christie, and he's going to also bring to us another very interesting topic, very important topic as well, the logic of reincarnation. So stay tuned. Saturday, May the 22nd, second at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So please don't miss. It's another very interesting topic. And the next announcement I would like to make is actually a reminder. Our symposium is coming up. The 15th Spiritist Symposium. This is amazing. What an amazing journey. So on June 5th and June 6th, two sessions from 2 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And the topic is going to be mediums and mediumship. So stay tuned. It's going to be available to be watched online through either via YouTube or Facebook. Excellent. David, at this point, we'd like to open the floor for you again for any final comments, considerations. Also, if there are any particular projects you were working on, feel free to talk about it. And if you would be so kind to also say the final prayer for us.
It'd be my blessing. I'll just say briefly that we've received much more interest in contacting us and connecting with us, and we've been working on updating our website to make that easier on everyone. So that's still at some point in the near future. As of now, we can be reached through the Federation if anyone wishes to get in touch. And into final considerations, it's been such a rich project working on this and understanding a little better, like my role, in that I'm not here to present as a perfected being by any stretch, but by one who's now more willing to share through the times when I fall on my face and encourage others out there who may not think that they're worthy of doing this work, who may not think that they're good enough, that they're good enough, that they're worthy, that we're not called to be perfect here in this time, in this place. We're called to be willing examples of our imperfect selves. We're called to be willing to come forward despite our imperfections and despite all the times we completely forgot to do to others what we would want them to do to us. To ask for their forgiveness, to ask for forgiveness from God, and know that we've actually received it. This whole process has taught me that this is a living example of asking you shall receive. That the most important thing, perhaps, is to just keep going. Spiritism teaches us, by studying and participating in it, how to learn the golden rule. It teaches us because the whole philosophy is woven so carefully, so deftly, with these threads of love and charity coming to us from thousands of years ago, prepared and uniquely suited for each of our needs. It's such a beautiful lineage to be a part of, and one that I'm just just beginning to understand that it's in my imperfection that I can donate to it, rather than as one who has arrived at any particular destination. And so I just wish to give thanks to everyone involved in any degree, disembodied or embodied, because the other lesson that Spiritism is teaching me is it's so beautiful when we choose to work together. We receive inspiration from each other, we receive guidance from each other, we receive so much love from each other. Again, despite our imperfections, it's the most beautiful thing. And witnessing souls receive this love from us is even more beautiful, knowing that they possibly haven't been touched in a very long time. And so it's with a growing attitude of humility and respect for this incredible living body of work that I thank you all for including me in it. And I will conclude with a closing prayer. Master Jesus, we thank you for giving us this greatest commandment and giving us not only thousands of years to practice integrating it into our behavior, into our deep understanding. We thank you for all the thousands of times you've assisted us as we forget. Thousands of times you've assisted us as we turn our back. The thousands of times you've patiently, lovingly awaited for us to turn around and be willing to follow you again. Lord, we pray for the ongoing courage, the ongoing inspiration to keep following you, to keep remembering your example, and to keep learning to apply this golden rule that you've given us. So be it.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your final words, for your prayer. Thank you for such an amazing lecture. And we wish everybody a great remaining of weekend, a great week, and may we apply these lessons we learn from Spiritism into our daily lives and our daily progress. Many blessings.
Thank you.